Glenn to get started.
Thanks, Holly, and thanks, Fours, for inviting us today. For those of you who may know me, I've not gone through all the sort of names, but usually you may see me as the Fours technical advisor, but my day job is managing director of the Driver Handbook, and we're very proud as well to be a Fours affinity partner. I'm also joined today by Karen. So if anybody's got any tricky questions, then I probably won't be answering them. Karen will be, so I'll leave that to her. But in the meantime, what I'll do is give a short presentation of firstly covering really communications in the 21st century, and frighteningly we are a quarter of the way through that. And we still see people communicating as if they're in the last century. What I'm going to go through is a bit of background to communications, where the legislation points to with regard to communicating with our staff, with our drivers, certainly around safety critical information, regulatory information, and also where that leads into good practice and how that dilemma can be answered with a very, very simple solution. So I'm going to attempt to share screen. So I have a window already open. Is that in presentation mode?
I believe so.
Thank you. So as I said, driver communications, how do you do yours? Like I said, we are the Driver Handbook. It's been established now for around 7 or 8 years. And when we first established as a company, we were going for all the marketing, we were going for the branding, etc. And the branding company was coming up with all of these sort of fancy names as to what we should call ourselves. But we are very much do what it says on the tin. It is the Driver Handbook, and we had quite a few toe-to-toe arguments with branding people to make sure that the industry absolutely understands what we are and what we do. So we are a team of specialists. We are transport, safety, health and safety, communications people first, and then we employ technical people to deliver what we want. We're not a technical company who's having a crack at this sector. We are sector people who's having a crack at technology. We employ our own software developers. We own all of our code. If you want a blue button change into red, then we can do that. And make sure everything is in the way that our customers want them. And we take a lot of sort of customer feedback to develop the product. We're also collaborative rather than competitive. We do one thing well. We get asked quite a lot, oh, do you do walk around check? Can you do this? Can you do that? And actually, no, we'd rather collaborate with those companies who do that. And we're working with a range of organizations who utilize our single product to enhance the product offering that they've got. So where does it all start? Why are we doing this? I'm not sure of the age of everybody in the room, but certainly I remember all of these publications, the magazines, the August Book of Dreams, and in the olden days there was no Wikipedia, and you'd be looking up the dictionary or the encyclopedia, things like that. And if you needed to know somebody's phone number, you'd be into the yellow pages. All of these are gone. All of these print documents have gone. They've all gone digital, and they've all gone digital for a reason. And that is the rationale, really, behind the Driver Handbook, the Driver Handbook as a business. As soon as something goes to print, it is pretty much out of date. But also, you've got the print cost, the distribution cost, the revision costs, and then probably, as soon as it's distributed, there's something else changed. For those of you in the O licensed aspect of our sector, how many updates to the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness does the DVSA make? At least twice a year. So subsequently, we've got to revise the documentation that we're pushing out to our staff to reflect that. So the importance of driver communications. Firstly, we ask people to self-assess. How do you get safety critical information to your drivers? How do you do that quickly? How do you know if they've accessed it, read it, understood it? We were working with one of our customers a few years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. It was a tramping operation, Monday to Friday. They didn't see their drivers at all. They sent toolbox talks printed in an envelope to their home address with a stamped addressed envelope in the envelope to send it back. That's how ineffective their communication was to their drivers. Because they don't see them on a day-to-day basis. Their return rate was 8%. And just by adopting a more digital approach, they improved that significantly. How much time is spent ensuring drivers have the information they need? Could that time be spent more productively? We're working with one large organization. Again, they've been a customer of ours for quite some time. They repurposed 3 people within the operation by simply digitizing their communication. So there's huge efficiencies that can be made. What happens when the information needs updating? Sat in a potential customer's office a couple of years ago, very proud of the new printed document that they had sat there in the box, not even distributed yet, just come back from the printers, but they're highlighted 4 updates. So before it had even gone out the door, they needed to update it 4 times. So how often are we going to do that, and how often do you leave drivers with out-of-date information until you do those updates? And would your current driver communication stand up to legal scrutiny? So if you are in that situation where somebody is having a scrutinous eye over your communication, would it stand up to that level of scrutiny? When it comes to the law, I've already mentioned the Guide to Maintaining Roadworthiness. The most recent copy is up there, April 2025, and it clearly states that drivers must be adequately trained and given clear written instructions. So again, are your instructions clear, and do they satisfy that requirement? Moving on to health and safety is also covered in the legislation. So the Good Act of 1974 says that we should provide information, instruction and training, and also down to the management of health and safety at work regulations. That must be comprehensible and relevant information. So again, we're starting to see the underpinning legislation that goes with all of this. And I would say most good operators will have both of these covered. However, one thing that we do find is this particular legislation or aspect of legislation quite often gets I wouldn't say forgotten about, but not even considered quite often. Sometimes we meet operators, without sort of asking for a show of hands or what you do in your operation. But sometimes we meet operators who don't even give their drivers a mobile phone. They're expected to use their own. Whereas actually, in an industry that's obsessed with compliance, we use that term quite a lot. But we have compliance with DVSA, the regulations the DVSA is concerned about, the regulations that the TC is concerned about, the regulations that health and safety is concerned about. But when it comes to lone workers, quite often, and there are still operators out there who don't issue drivers with a method of communication, and we see that quite a lot. And then coming down to FORS. FORS really, I like FORS in a way that what FORS does pulls all of those elements of regulation together into one single publication, one single code of practice. And you adhere to that code of practice, you are pretty much adhering to every regulation out there. There's over 30 communication requirements within the FORS standard. It does collate all of those regulatory elements, and there's specific requirements around M5, saying that we should be distributing an up-to-date driver handbook, and S8 providing more dynamic communications around hot topics through Toolbox talks, notifications, articles, etc. Another aspect of communication that we're expected to distribute is the highway code. And, for those of you who sort of know, there's a major update to the highway code in April 2022. The previous version to that was 2015, so 7 years between the printed versions. So those people who distribute physical highway code should be aware there's 27 updates between one printed copy and another printed copy. And if you did distribute, or if you are distributing the hard copy, then you are only distributing the 2022 version. You're not distributing the 10th of April version as at this year. There's been 6 updates since that printed copy. Again, we should be aware of these as transport manager. We should make sure that our drivers are aware of the elements that are relevant to them. So, what to communicate? Everything a driver needs to know behind the wheel. One thing that really frustrates me, I used to be a driver, by the way. One thing that really frustrates me is those people who say, oh, I'm just a driver. I'm just a driver. And actually, it is an extremely responsible role. They've got to know and comply with the law. That is all packaged up within the highway code. They are custodians of 5 of the 11 O license undertakings that are specifically relevant to them. They've got your own company policies, your procedures, your instructions in writing. Then there's the risk assessments, the method statements, and any particular client requirements you may have. There's a whole host of information there that a driver needs to have, and making sure that they've got them access to them, that it's accessible at current, and also that you've got the evidence that you've provided that information to them should somebody ask. There's a split between the content that we provide with drivers. We sort of call it, I get told off a little bit by Karen because it's a bit jargonistic, but static content and dynamic content. And I refer to the static content as the content that doesn't generally change that much. Driver's hours, for example, is pretty much driver's hours. It's been 45-minute break after 4.5 hours since I did my training way back in the decades. There may be slight tweaks along the way. There may be certain regulatory changes or changes in good practice, but generally speaking, the information is pretty static. We've gone through a number of elements of reference material in the past, and one thing that we do pride ourselves in is creating an easy to navigate, logical structure that is always up to date. And then there are elements that if ADR is relevant to you, is STGO registered to you, or longer semi-trailers relevant, we don't package the whole handbook with all of the information. You can select and deselect relevant information that is for your operation. So then when it comes to dynamic content, this is split out, and if you see at the bottom of the app image there, you've got articles, the handbook articles, notifications. Handbook being the static content, and then the articles are pretty much like your notice board. That is where your toolbox talks may go, your safety alerts, your notifications, if there are any updates, seasonal issues, your Christmas drink driving campaign or winter driving, etc., and also any periodic information that you may wish to push out associated with your company. One thing though, and certainly one thing we've looked at some of our customers, is the information that's being pushed out in a dynamic way, and systematically throughout the year, quite often is inconsistent with some of the information that is provided in a static way, like through the handbooks, and we make sure that everything is consistent all the way through. We also provide an annual campaign plan. We actually have within the library, there's a whole host of a library of toolbox talks, different topics, hot topics, whether they're relevant to PCV, HGV, van, car, all vehicle types. There is a library of about 50 toolbox talks in there that can be selected at a certain period. However, we do provide a new toolbox talk every month aligned to a campaign plan, which is aligned to Silver S8, and that gets distributed, updated accordingly. So when it comes to the content, all the hard work's done. The full library of content is there. We develop that, we maintain that. It is always up to date. We monitor those changes to regulation, industry practice, government campaigns, anything that may inform an amendment, and we're on it, usually before the regulatory change has taken place. But also, I think what's key, if you're distributing paper information, then it's pretty two-dimensional. It's pretty static, text only, some imagery, but with a digital device, you can be engaging. You can have multimedia in there. You can provide links to more detailed info. You have videos, animations, etc. And we make sure we've got that capability, and we provide those elements of multimedia as well. Oh, and I forgot, quizzes, knowledge checks. So you can make them fun as a quiz, or you can make them a little bit more formal as a knowledge check, but you can assess the understanding of the information you've been pushing out. So how to communicate effectively. This is where I sort of come on to the product. One of the most effective and accessible communication methods available. We ensure it's up to date, as I said, but also, when was your last driver handbook revised? What is the date on it? Talking to an operator at CV show, and their handbook was dated, and they'd been picked up for it. Their handbook was dated 2004. So that will give you some indication as to how panicky they were around the information that they were given. I'd imagine most people in this room won't have that. You're all fours. You get your audit every year. That would have been picked up well before a regulatory officer did. But just something to be aware of. We believe there are some shocking operators out there. As I said, it is dynamic, but also it enables you to be creative by providing video, by providing imagery, by providing infographics, etc., or animation. We can cut down on the words, and we're also looking at ways that we can improve the accessibility for those that English is not the first language, or those who may have reading difficulties. We're also always constantly sort of looking as to how we can get that information across in a more creative way. So I've gone through the content, fully customizable, engaging, creative, dynamic content that we have. Most operators will probably 80% of their content will be ours, and then they'll top it up with 20% of their own to make it contextually relevant to their own operation. They do that using the content management system, which they have access to, where it's just a simple editor, a bit like editing a Word document. And as soon as you click save, that information is pushed out to the app that the drivers have with them at all times. We have a series of handbook types. We have the standard handbook types: HGV, PCV, van, car, forklift truck. We have a whole policy pack as well that's available to FORS operators. So if you need to cross-check your policies against version 7, for example, that's freely available. But also we have customers have created their own handbooks, whether it's for health and safety, whether it's for workshop staff, whether it's the inductions for staff, or driver inductions, or any other staff inductions. Training departments are using this for training material, and warehouse staff, porters. Like I said, there's over 50 handbooks there. I think Karen's favourite one is the chicken catchers handbook. There's a story behind the Chicken Catcher's Handbook, but we'll maybe do that another time. The content structure, you've got the handbook and the handbook types that you select. It then cascades into we call them sections, but they're like the chapters of the book. So they've got policy and the law, you're the professional driver, safe and efficient vehicles. It sort of gives you that logical way to navigate. And then that then takes you to a menu of individual content pages within there. There's also a search facility should people need to get to a piece of content quickly. The content management system, you as a manager have a login, you can edit content, customize it to your own organization. We can even put the app and the content management system on brand for you. You can add your text, your link, your images, your videos, put your PDFs in there, and you get that dynamic instant update ability. One thing that it has got, though, that I've not mentioned so far, is that live driver progress management reporting, so you know exactly what's been distributed and when and who has accessed it and for how long. So, you know, if you've got 20% of your drivers who are not engaging with the app for whatever reason, or have not accessed a bit of information, then you know very quickly who to target within your operation to provide the additional support. And on the system, as part of the service, we provide all training and support as to, you know, get everybody up to speed in using it and starting to distribute information to their app, create the toolbox talks, send out notifications, etc. It's not just a flat organizational structure in there. If you've got a complex organization, you've got different departments, if you've got different regions, if you've got different vehicle types, we can create that structure in there as well. So some of the larger operators, we have very complex structures within the system. For some of the smaller ones, more simplistic, you know, it might be, you know, just a single department with a single distribution with a single handbook. And then the simplest aspect, and it has to be, is for the drivers, is the app itself. Personal account sign in. Once they're signed in forever, unless you say, you know, provide alternative sort of guidance on that. We have some people who use the in-cab devices and they log out after 24 hours. Some people, if they're using personal devices with the drivers, then they can be stayed logged in as you would be stayed logged into any other app. You select the content by handbook type, easy to navigate. It measures their progress as they go through, and it's got the ability to receive notifications of articles and all the other dynamic information that goes with it. So finally, strategic benefits that we sort of get from the system. We have full accountability. You've got an end-to-end audit trail of everything that you're doing, and also if you've got multiple users in there, if you've got multiple content management users, it pulls together the full audit trail of everything that everybody is doing. Transparency gives you visibility, who's accessed what information, where, when, and who needs that additional support. And then, of course, you've got the efficiency. Everything that you do digitally is instant. As I said, the audit trail provides reports, records, what's been communicated, when, to who, and by who, digital signatures, read receipts, declarations, and records of comprehension as well. Just one thing to be aware, you know, we do get asked quite a lot, oh, is it sign on glass, you know, you need a signature, you know, and actually there is no legal requirement for a signature on anything, a physical wet signature. It is something that's been developed as an industry practice, but an acknowledgement, a declaration, marking something as read while you're logged into that system yourself, in the same way that you check the box for terms and conditions for anything that you might book on the internet, is just as viable in legal terms. And that's the same for FORS as well. So that acknowledgement. In fact, the FORS standard doesn't ask for a signature of it asks drivers to declare. A driver must make a declaration of. It doesn't ask for a signature of declaration. So just something to be aware of. And then happy to share, we don't need to read this right now, but happy to share the slides. If anybody wants the slides, you'll have our email address and you can request them. But those people who may need to put a business case together, it's a little bit more than print costs versus digital costs. There are a whole host of other benefits that come with adopting a digital method of communication, and we've got all that information to help inform anybody who might need to put a business case together. And ladies and gentlemen, before I go into any questions, I don't know if Karen's got anything additional to add to anything I might have missed there. Is that a no? Okay, thank you. Are there any questions in the? I'll just have a look in the chat pane.
We haven't had any questions come through. So everyone, if you have any burning questions for Glenn or Karen, please pop them in the chat. I actually put a question in the chat myself, but you kind of got to it throughout the presentation. But my question is, what is the best way to roll out the driver handbook across a fleet, especially with a mixture of full-time and agency drivers?
I'll take that one, shall I? So it's each operation is different, as you can probably imagine, and I think a lot of customers will sort of do it in a piece by piece case. When they see a driver, they'll sort of get them on board with it. Other people will do meetings when they sort of do a stand down and introduce it to everybody. But also the way that our licensing model works with it is that, let's say you've got 50 drivers and there's a mix of agency and full time. You can repurpose licenses for agency drivers, so that, let's say you've got Glenn Davis in for a week this week and then he leaves and then you get another agency driver. You don't have to keep buying more licenses. You can repurpose them for new agency drivers. So it works in various ways in terms of sort of rollout and management of all of that.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. Can you share any examples of improvements that operators have seen after implementing the driver handbook?
I think the key message, not specific, individual scenarios, but the key sort of general message that we get from our customers is that quite often drivers feel like they're almost second-class citizens, in as much as the sort of company information that they're out and driving and they're doing their jobs, but they often miss out on that sort of more broader communication thing that people that work in the office or in depots or whatever will be part of. And the companies that use the driver handbook for much more of a broader communication tool, so that they will share company information with drivers, employee benefits, that type of thing, drivers feel much more sort of engaged and loved, I suppose, a little more as an employee, rather than just getting the do-don't type of information, which is what they're used to. That sort of broader message often helps to engage them better.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. We haven't had any questions come through. So if there was nothing else, Glenn or Karen, you'd like to add, we can probably close this here.
Well, I think we either covered it really well, which means, I was thinking of that and he's just said it, or people are disillusioned by it. I don't know, but I'll let the feedback sort of decide on that one. But it might be worth asking Karen, because what are the sort of some of the FAQs that you get, or what is the number one question that you might get from an operator when you do a demo?
Probably the most frequently asked question is about adding content, company specific content. So whilst you've got access to the library of our content, it's a bit of a scenario where a customer will say, oh, can I put this in? Can I put that in? And ultimately the answer is yes. Whatever it is, You know, it might be company, it might be safe systems of work, it might be customer instructions, it might be something as simple as like a Christmas message. You can put whatever you want in there on top of our content. There's no sort of limits or restrictions as to what you can add to it. So you can make it your own, very much so.
Oh, we have one question
Good
from
question from
Tony.
Tony.
Thank you,
Oh,
Tony.
that's a good question.
Yes. How much does this cost?
Today or in 2
Currently,
days' time?
we are about to actually have a price increase, but it's a really nominal price increase. Currently, it's £599 a year for TDH Connect. So that's the initial license for that. And then there's a FORS price for the app, which is £14.99 a driver a year. So you can quite easily work out, depending on the number of drivers that you've got, the sort of annual cost on it.
Okay, thank you.
And it sounds
sorry.
like it looks like a security question there from Stephen McCann. I suppose really the best way to sort of answer that is really to describe what preventative measures we've got in place. So
yeah.
do you want to do that? So we use Amazon Web Services, which is probably it is one of the premium systems sort of out there, cloud-based systems out there, protected by Cloudflare. We are penetration tested every month. It is as robust as we can get the system. We have just gone through the security protocols for an ammunition provider for the MOD, and we've just passed all that security elements. So we're pretty much as robust as any system can be.
So Glenn, the question's changed slightly. Stephen's asked about the legal requirement for a signature. So if there was a cyber attack, this is assuming we've lost all our data. So you can, any data that's in the system, you can download onto your own machines locally. We have, ongoing backups. All of our servers are monitored 24/7, 365. So there's sort of ways round it all. And I guess because we have backups, even if we'd lost all of the sort of live data, we would always be able to sort of go back historically and access that type of information as well. So we've put all the measures in place possibly that we can do. But I guess, I don't know, I don't really know the answer to that. I guess we've done everything that we potentially possibly could ever do to protect ourselves. I think
also that. Because it's cloud-based, the information is always there. The information is always somewhere, which can be subsequently backed up and accessed.
And I guess the cyber attack approach blocks access to it, but you don't lose everything forever in a day. So there will always be records that we may delay access to, but they would be there eventually, I guess, at some point.
Yeah. Good one from Holly there. We've had a few examples of this.
So my question was, just for everyone on the call, can the handbook help during incidents, investigations, or audits?
Yes, is the answer to that one.
Yes.
It's used on a regular basis by customers for all of those things, basically. So because there's reporting at every stage of the process, so you can, for any type of those three things that you've mentioned, Holly, incidents, investigations, or audits, you can evidence digitally when information's been added, when it's been updated, who it's been updated by, then the fact that it's been distributed to your drivers, whether or not the drivers have accessed it and looked at it. You can then underpin all of that with that knowledge check quiz approach. So you can very easily pull together a package of evidence for whatever output you need it for.
Fantastic,
and
thank you.
Dimitrov question there again, interesting one. We do have the similar relationship we have with FORS and providing the Affinity FORS service. We do have the RHA driver handbook as well, which we provide. So that's a single application under the RHA branding. And the second question is additional English language for non-English speaking drivers. We're not a translation service, and we don't claim that we are, but the system does handle 39 different languages, and there are translation plugins that can be used. It does need somebody from the mother tongue then to sense check some of those, because we are a jargonistic sector, sometimes that jargon doesn't translate across, so something to be aware of there. But we are also exploring translation plugins at the minute, so our developers are looking at that at the moment.
That's great to hear. We'll wait a few more moments to see if there's any more questions that will come through.
Good questions there. Thank you very much, and thank you, Holly.
No worries. Thank you both,
inviting us.
Glenn and Karen, for taking the time to present today, and thank you so much for everyone for joining.